Awesome. So I'm just going to dive right in here, guys. If you would like, you can follow along with me because I'm going to be giving you some recommendations about some setup information. If you would like, you can use the online web version of Teams, or if you're on your own computer, and not like a shared one, you can also use the Teams app on your desktop. Now, for anyone that was here this morning, and you do have a large hint, where do we start to get to any of the Microsoft products? Yes, yes, I am legitimately so excited. Um,
OGB, you go.
we're gonna click on the waffle up here on the upper left. To get to this page, it's just insider.blueridge.edu. Teams will probably be in your list because it's one of the more frequent ones. However, if it's not, you can always use the search box here at the top, or you can click on more apps here in the lower right. When you click on Teams, it'll open in the browser. It might suggest that you download. Um, Microsoft kind of decides when it wants that to happen and when it doesn't. So if you don't get a pop-up for it, um, hold on just a second. Let me slide this out of the way. If you don't get a pop-up for it, in the upper right-hand corner, like right here, the reason I'm not opening this is because my friends are all heathens and I don't know what they're sending me just to mess with the fact I'm presenting. Right here is going to be three little dots on the Teams thing. If you click on that, it'll have a drop down and you can select download desktop app, and you should be able to download it and install it without having to have any help from IT. It'll just do it for you. If it's installed on your computer, you can always search for it the same way that you would search for any other program and then select it, and it'll open up for you on your computer. So it's the first time you've opened Teams. Let's talk a little bit about what exactly you're looking at first. Just some basic navigation tips. You have a back button, a forward button, this search box. If you were in the session this morning, you've heard us talk about this at length with glowing reviews. Search didn't work on old SharePoint, but it is fantastic when it comes to all of the new Microsoft products. You can search for posts in your channels. You can search for documents you've shared with other people or have been shared with you. You can even search for people. And a cool thing about that is you search them and then like you have options here. You can open the chat with that person. You can show their contact card. The really cool thing about the contact card is it shows you a lot of that directory information right on your screen, and you can pretty much find out like anything that you need to write in one central location. Because that's what Teams is. It's a central hub for all sorts of communication, collaboration. A lot of people kind of think of it as like, this is the Google chat, but it's way more than just that one tiny piece. Here on the contact card, you can see what my email address is, what my office phone number is. You can even see what my office location is. Some other cool stuff that it's got is in the organization tab, you can see my reporting structure. So if you're like, I remember that this person is like, I remember that this is their boss, but I cannot remember what their name is. You can look for that person and you can see people that directly report to that person, as well as the reporting tree going up. Obviously, I report to Amy, and so on and so forth. In certain Microsoft products, there'll be additional tabs here, and you'll be able to see, for instance, files you shared with that person, conversations you've had with them, and you'll be able to go directly to that, just depending on where you are in the Microsoft ecosystem. Right here is the key to everything, the three little dots. Anywhere you see on Microsoft, like those three little dots are gold. So for our purposes today, I want to specifically point out the settings. We're going to come back to this in just a second, but this is how you get to your settings. If you click on this right here, either clicking on the two little letters that'll be your initials, or you can click on Blue Ridge Community College. It's all one little block here. What this will do is it'll show you the accounts that are currently like signed in. And for most of you, it's only going to be one. However, if you work with the system office and have been added to one of their like environments, those will show up in this list as well, and you can flip between them. While we're here, I'm going to go ahead and point out one cool little feature that um, is useful. You can click on Set Status Message right here. And as like a use case, I use this one a lot. What I'll do is I'll type lunch right here. I'll click show when people message me and then clear status after an hour, or you can do custom to pick whatever. Uh, for instance, right now, my actual account is set to presenting to try and tamp down the hooligan behavior of my friends. I'll show you what that looks like here in just a second. Over on the left, here are your tabs, and that's where the magic sort of starts to happen. This is, like I said, more than just chat. It has links to all of your team information, all of your chats with people. It's got here, you can see by default, it's got OneDrive, it's got pretty much everything that you could imagine. Now, I hear you telling me that you don't care about any of that. You only care about Excel. Your entire job is spreadsheets. Well, the cool thing about that is you can add any Microsoft product that you would like to this navigation list. If you click on the View More Apps button here, it'll give you some suggestions, or if there's something like specific that you're looking for, you can click on it. And if you click on it directly, what it'll do is it'll open it one time. If you're like, oh, Heather, I really meant it, only spreadsheets all the time, you can then right click on it and you can click pin, and this will permanently add it to your navigation. And this navigation is totally customizable. I can drag it up and down. I can put it wherever I want. When I do that, I can click on it, and anywhere here, it would show me any documents that I have in Excel that I've been working with recently or have been shared with me. Just so you know, this is like my this is a dummy account, so you guys can see that first time kind of setup. That's why nothing's showing on this screen right now. So when you first log into Teams and you first open it up, it's going to probably look like this. You do have the option of leaving it like this if that makes sense for you. However, I recommend that the very first thing you do is you open up your settings. There are a few that the defaults don't make any sense, and you're going to probably miss some information that you don't want to miss if you don't change them. So note this like block sort of layout here. These are the teams that I'm part of. There's the IT department internal and the IT department external. We're going to open up that settings menu. Click the three dots in the upper right-hand corner and then select settings. As you can see, there are a ton of options over here on the left. I'm going to recommend that you look at them. There's definitely a lot of like personal choice in here because the whole thing is Microsoft is made for people who've never looked at it before. So it's made to be used however works for you and how you work. I'm only going to highlight some of the really like big settings that have affected a bunch of people so far. So you have all of this here. The first thing I want to point out are these two right here in the center of the screen where it's open content in Teams windows and starting chats. So before we go into this, I want to specify what the difference is between a team and a chat. A team is that like right now when you're migrating to your team's sites where it's like your whole department, that's a team. A chat is just an individual conversation that you can have either with one person or with a group of people, and we'll be looking at that a little bit more in depth in just a second. However, this particular setting changes how new ones of both of those are opened. You can either choose main window or new window. If you leave it on main window, what'll happen is when you go into a team or a chat, it'll open up in the window for teams that you already have open. If you choose new window, and when you click on a link to go into something, it'll open up as a pop-up and you can manage that separately. So if I'm like, "Hmm, I think I like everything in Teams," one of the cool things is I can leave it in that main window, but I can also open like one individual pop-up manually. So just really play with this and decide what works for you the best.
Heather, is
I
that
prefer
the
main window for
channel?
this.
I don't see that.
Do you have the web version open or do you have the desktop version open?
I opened it out of from the Insider.
Okay, so Teams is one of those Microsoft products where there is more functionality in the desktop version than there is in the web version. So
Okay.
if you're going through your settings, and this is true for any of you, if you're going through your settings and you're like, I'm not seeing what's on your screen, it's probably because you're in the web version instead of the desktop one, and that feature's not available in the web version.
Thank you.
Mhm. Scrolling down a little bit, you've got some information about languages and so forth. Most of this is picked from your computer and whatever is default on it. You might have noticed that this screen, mine is black by default, but most of yours is probably going to be white. That's because my computer is set to dark mode as the default, and so it's pulling the black color from my system settings. You do have the option of setting an out of office thing right here, a notification. What'll happen when you do that is when someone messages you, it'll pop up a little notification on the bottom bar letting them know whatever your status is. However, when you click on this, it's going to tell you, oh, this is going to sync to your Outlook stuff and it'll be on your calendar and such. And while that is like technically true, it is practically a lie until we do the email migration later. Because if you recall, we cannot use Calendar and we cannot use Outlook until we have migrated from Gmail to Outlook, which will happen sometime next year. If you do that, like you can play with the stuff that are in those services. However, none of the email notifications from those will reach your actual targets, and the calendars won't sync to your Google calendars, so you might not get notifications that you are expecting to get. However, it will show up in Teams as a little pop-up whenever someone's messaging you. I'm going to move on down to the appearance here. And this is where you can tell Teams to override that like color set. You
Oh.
you if you like the light mode or the dark mode, but you don't want to change your computer settings, you can fix it here. Did we have a question? Okay.
Okay. Oh, great.
Okay, you can also set your like skin tone preference. You know those like emojis that you use? If you don't want it to have like a yellow smiley face or whatever, you can pick like a skin tone that appeals to you. All right, this next one is where the magic starts to happen. In chats and channels, you start to get to make decisions about teams that really change the way that teams behaves as a whole. This very first one is choosing between grid and lists. If you recall, I pointed out those blocks that were on my screen before. If we change this over to list, it looks like this. Instead of being blocks, it's got all of my teams and their channels listed over here on the left-hand side, and I can select stuff from this center portion as well. One reason that I generally recommend that people go with lists over the grid layout is one, it does let you go immediately into the little pieces that you care about. For instance, if I only like want to view this specific channel, I can click directly on that one there and it'll open straight up. I don't have to do multiple clicks. Another cool thing about the list feature is that it is very customizable. We're going to cover some of that customization here in just a minute, but just know that in list view, you have a lot of rearranging options and things that really customize to people's preferred work styles and where you can see the parts that you care about that you can't see in the block version. So I'm going to go back to settings because I want to show you one additional thing that you can change. By default, it'll look like this. It'll have a tab for your teams and it'll have a tab for your chats. Just so you know what it looks like, this is what a chat is. You can see that I have received a chat from Heather and it shows up like this. If I had a new one, it would be white with a little asterisky thing beside it. This has been kind of confusing for a bunch of people because they'll get a notification and they can't quite find where it is in the entire Microsoft ecosystem. So what we recommend doing is instead of having the second setting in chats and channels set to separate, set it to combined. When you do that, the Teams button is going to disappear over here from the activity and chat, and all you'll have is the chats button. When you do that, it's all combined here into one list, and it's all right at your fingertips in one location. This also makes it really easy to apply those same rearranging sort of tips and tricks to your list, and you can do that to your chats in the same spot. You can go through and you can right click on something that you're like, oh, I need to be, I love this, and you can add it to your favorite section. You can also go in and you can create a new section. I want to show you a kind of nitty-gritty trick that has been beneficial to a bunch of people. Some people are in more teams than others. So some people only have like a list like this. However, some people have lists that are like so far they scroll forever trying to find whatever it is they're looking for. In that case, you can do the following. If you right click on whatever channel it is that you actually like care about and something that you want to see like immediately when something new is posted in it, you right click on it, go to show in and do a new section. And you can make this whatever you would like. I'm going to call mine notifications. If you want, you can pick like a little emoji that goes with it and you click create. When you do this, it's going to just sit there. However, the magic is when you click on the three little dots and click unread only. I'm going to do the same thing with that, Amy, if you wouldn't mind messaging me if you're still around.
I am around.
Awesome.
Is it our test? Your
Yes,
test?
my test, please.
Would you like a mention or no?
Uh, a mention's cool. Give me a mention.
Okay.
Okay.
Oop. Oh, crap. Test.
So as you can see right now, there's nothing in the notifications. However, one just popped up and I have this pop up down here. I have lots of things that popped up in lots of places to let me know that something's going on. Since it is white and it's got this little bubble, I can see that something is there now. And since it's unread, I haven't looked at it. It's in my notifications thing right here at the very top, and I can go straight to it. Before I do that, I just want to let you know a little bit of what you're looking at. For instance, there is this little like @ symbol right here that lets me know that I was mentioned in something. This will happen in any of your chats. It'll happen in your channels. It'll happen anywhere in your teams. I'm going to go ahead and click on this so that you can see what's going on here. The mention is also highlighted by the fact that it is orange here and it's got an @. I think if you're in light mode, it is blue instead of orange, but it is otherwise highlighted for you. What a mention is you can type @ and then the person's name, Or you can type at in a channel, at in a team, and it will send a notification to all of the people in that at, whether it's at Heather or at IT department internal, and it'll let them know that they were mentioned. That'll show up in their activity like this here, and you can interact with it here on the right, or you can usually open it up and do a go to channel if it was mentioned in a channel instead of a chat. So what exactly, um, does everyone know exactly what a channel is? Probably not. I'm just gonna assume a big no on that one. I'm gonna tell you. Oh yeah, cool, cool. So a channel is a subset of the actual team itself. So here we have like the IT internal, and this is the entire IT department. We're all members of this. There are like two reasons to make a channel. One is maybe you want to separate all of the notifications of all of the messages of a certain kind. For instance, we use the notification one to highlight and separate anything out that's a notification. It just makes it really easy for people to like track content that's the same and to where they can really pick out the things that are important without having to wade through a whole bunch. The other type of channel is for a subset of members. So for example, if and for any of the IT people present at the moment, I know that it's not set up like this, but if our IT support team isn't the entire IT department, maybe it's just the SharePoint people, you can then create a channel with just that subset of people, and they'll be the only ones that can see that portion, that channel, and all of the included information. We'll dive in a little bit deeper here in just a little bit. So I want to finish going through the settings with you guys here for chats and channels. The next one down here is show message previews for team names and channels. I recommend having this on. I currently have it off because, as I mentioned, my friends are all heathens, but you can turn it on here, and what that'll do is where it says like Amy Williford or it says the channel name, underneath that it'll have a little preview of whatever the most recent message they send you is. The rest of this is mostly just personal preference. You can choose like the size of certain pop-ups and how long you want it to be there, so on and so forth. There's another couple settings that you're going to want to look at over in notifications and activity. First off, you're going to want to make sure that your mute all notifications is set to off, unless for some reason like you're in the middle of something that you like legitimately don't want any notifications. For instance, I'm presenting right now, so my account currently has this muted so that we don't have a million pop-ups going on in the screen over here. Generally speaking, you're going to just want to leave it on off. This is more personal preference stuff where you can choose the sounds, you can choose where things appear on the screen, you can choose how they look, how long that they're there. One thing to be mindful of here is if you're like changing the position on the screen, you're going to want to like think about what that notification is covering up. So if you're like, I don't want to do bottom right, I'm going to do the top right here. And it's constantly popping up and you're trying to interact with whatever, what would that notification be covering up? These controls, right? Like that might be difficult for some people. Whereas over here, you might be covering up some of the navigation or controls if it's in the top left. So just try these out and find which one works for you, which one is easiest for you to read and doesn't slow you down at all. This one right here, the missed activities and emails setting, I highly recommend looking at this one because it has annoyed a huge collection of people. So by default, I believe it's set to daily. What a missed activity email is If there is unread activity in your team or you've got some chats, the system will send you an email letting you know, hey, here's some stuff you might have missed today. You can set it to as soon as possible and it'll just send you emails all of the time. You can set it to daily and it'll give you a daily digest. However, a lot of people don't like receiving those summaries, especially if they're like, I was on vacation yesterday, like I'm gonna figure it out. If that's the case, go ahead and turn it to off. So just know that if you're getting emails that you don't want to get, you can fix that. You can fix it. So as we go down in the rest of these, there are essentially two different words that I want to point out. One is activity and the other is banner. Activity refers to this tab right here in your upper left that I showed you earlier, where you get like the little like red one or whatever, and you can open it up and it'll tell you what's going on. The banner refers to the little pop-ups. So for the most part, you're probably going to want to have it say show activity and banner for most of the things on this particular list. You can have it show you pop-ups. You need to make sure that it knows that you want to see notifications for when someone chats you, notifications pertaining to when you're mentioned. Here is one. Uh, you want to replies to your channel posts and like when like people are talking down further into like that chat thread, you can change the settings for that. And then this one here where it says posts in shown channels, this is off by default. I highly recommend that you turn it on. What this does is when you are just a member of a channel and someone posts in it, for example, the general channel where just general conversation happens in the IT department, if someone were to post in there and I had this set to off, I would not receive any notifications of any form letting me know that there had been a post other than that channel name turning bold in the list. Most people benefit from at least turning it to show an activity, if not also show an activity and banner. I also recommend that you check the box that says include replies because this will make sure that you get those notifications when someone continues to reply and like further conversation is happening in that chat thread. Uh, let's see here. Further down, we've got some meeting stuff. Most of this are Daniel or Dan, sorry. Are you in the online version or do you have the desktop version open? It we can work with that. Which setting is it grayed out on? It might be that something else further up isn't quite configured. For instance, if you still have yours set to show grid instead of list, a lot of the functionality goes away. So I would recommend checking your chats and channels to make sure you have it set to list. Also, if this thing right here is toggled to off, it'll disable your mentions portion. It is set to lists. Okay. Um, I
That's something that we can
let's send us a
investigate and
message.
then get back to you on for sure.
Let's send if you send me a message or email help desk or whatever, we'll get back to you and we'll figure out what it is that was wrong. I was just thinking off the top of my head. I'm not sure off the top of my head. Let's see. Sarah, no. Sarah was wondering if like you're part of the system office stuff, if the channels from your other ones will show up in your list. And Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the answer is no. You have to flip between them using this thingy up here.
Yeah, the each like the system office, that's a whole other tenant. So you have to switch to the tenant to get the notifications.
Okay. Yeah, I left a meeting last week and like switched back to my regular team and I just kept getting notifications as the conversation continued and I didn't have this on yet, so I was really surprised. I don't know if
Well, and some of that is also because if it's a Teams meeting, you were
yeah,
probably getting those because I
yep,
get like distance learning pop-ups,
right,
but
right,
that's
right.
just the meetings notification.
Okay, thank you.
Also, it does, I know it does for other accounts. I assume it does for organization as well. It still shows you right here when there's notifications to your other organizations. Like I mentioned, this is my test account we're looking at right now. However, I am still signed in as myself. And so if this were like my state office stuff, I can see here that I am getting notifications to my other account.
But that's all in the same tenant.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a feeling, I know what Sarah's talking about because I get them too.
Okay. Do we have any other questions right at this point? I don't know the answer to that one. Amy, do you?
Well, what account are you showing? OGB? Can get rid of it. Everyone can. Oh, yeah.
It's for when I did the
Eventually,
Leadership Academy.
yeah, and I've got that too. I think she's going to remove us after a while and kick us out.
Okay. I was trying to
Uh,
leave myself, but it won't let me. It wants me to log in, and I don't.
she's got to remove us to get it off of our list, but it's my understanding she was going to remove us after like a year or whatever. So
Okay. Well,
she
mine's
probably
been like
forgot.
2 or 3 years already.
Yeah, she probably forgot.
So, okay.
Okay. So if you got anything else, go ahead, type it in. And I'll pause for you here in a minute. Most of the rest of these settings, they are valuable. There's lots of stuff in here, and like go ahead, poke around in it. However, for the sake of time, I'm going to skip over most of the rest of this. Um, do know that calls here and a lot of this functionality with the calls piece is similar to calendar in that not everything's going to be available or work correctly until we do the email migration next year. So go ahead and like look at the stuff, but if you're like, this doesn't seem to be doing anything, it's probably not. Let's look some more at chats and channels. So I've shown you that one little trick here for notifications and like seeing things that are important to you. Let's dive into the other kind of teams and stuff. So I believe everyone here, if you haven't yet, you will soon be added to channels, to teams. And in those teams, you're going to see a channel that is named General. It's just default out of the box. You're also going to see one that's named like this that has one README on it. This is from us over here in IT, and we really need you to read it, as the name might imply. When you do so, um, ours is going to look just a little bit weird, a little bit different than yours. However, you'll have one that says policies and compliance, and you'll have one that says do's and don'ts. You can click on those tabs to read them. If it's not working correctly, you can right click on it and you can reload the tab. That is true for any tabs in all of Teams. Also, if something isn't working correctly, you might just want to open it in the browser using that same right-click sort of trick. I have it open for you guys here. So this is the policies and compliance one. I leave it to you guys to just read at your leisure. Just know that this is something that you are agreeing to by using our Teams period. It's just some of that kind of legal jargon and some of our policy stuff. The other one in that README channel is the link to this do's and don'ts. There are just some helpful tips to try and guide you into using the M365 products. They let you know a little bit about some of our key recommendations. For example, that bit about using and exploring the settings right away, that's in here in this list. I'm not going to read this to you guys as I believe that you guys are 100% literate. So I just want to go ahead and point out a couple of the ones just to re-highlight some of the stuff that's super important. Pinning, favoriting, and following, it affects you in Teams as well. So like when you're wanting stuff to be more visible, consider one of these options because that'll either hold it in place or it'll allow you to move it around some. Some of these tips may seem a little bit confusing because they pertain to specific products, or if you're looking through Teams and you're like, I'm not quite sure exactly how that works. We'll be covering those more in depth in one of our later sessions. We have deep dives into some specific products as well as just an overview of all M365 tools available to you. We've got some information here about what to do with your sites and what not to do with your sites. Just know that it's at your fingertips, and we highly recommend the Learn M365 link, as well as the help desk articles here written and maintained by the IT department.
And you can always chat GPT it or Google search. There's like a bazillion videos out there, so.
Everyone uses Microsoft, so you are not alone. And if you're encountering a problem, there are other people that have encountered the same problem, I promise. All right, so a couple little like gotchas or whatever here. Microsoft believes that simplicity is efficiency, and so it has a tendency to collapse or hide data that it thinks that you don't care about. There will be a certain amount of channels in your list that'll just kind of like Microsoft decides to show those. However, if you see this See All Channels button, that means you have at least one channel that's hidden. If you click the See All Channels here, it'll show you the full list. In this example, this account is a member of the M365 feedback channel. However, it's currently hidden from this list. I can either click directly onto this right here and it'll open it up for me one time, or I can click show right here and it'll permanently hold it in that list of teams and channels for me unless I go in and re-hide it. The same is true of your teams down here, and the interface is pretty much exactly the same. So we talked a little bit about what channels are. Let's look at how you create one. Everyone should have the ability to create a channel. There are 3 different types. So if you right click on this, your team that you're wanting to add the channel to, this gives you a bunch of different options. By all means, click around, find out what they do. But there's this add channel button, and this is how you create a new one. So let's say that I need to have a space for everyone involved in demos to collaborate, share, present, talk. I'm going to go ahead and create a space for that. I'm going to call it my demo channel. You can provide a description, and that'll help people when they're looking through the list. If you see here in the background in the tiny little print where it says members of the IT department, that's the description of the general channel. There are 3 types of channels. The first is standard. The standard channels are available to anyone that is a member of the team. So if I created my demo channel as a standard channel, that would allow anyone in my IT department internal to go ahead and access this channel and work in it. This is what you would use if you're doing like a topic sort of channel, such as our notifications. It's set up as a standard channel. However, if only some of the IT department members do demos, I maybe want to consider private. This lets you pick a subset of specific people to be involved in that channel. I'm going to go ahead and use that for my demo one here. Uh, that was my bad. I did a demo earlier and apparently Microsoft hasn't forgotten what I did yet. And so please hold while I do the same thing again, except this one is named Demo Channel 2. Thanks for y'all's patience. So since I'm working in that private channel sort of thing and I want to create a specific subset, what I'll do is I'll just start adding the people that I want to be in the channel. By default, you are always in any channel that you create and you don't have to add yourself. So let's add Amy in here. And I'm just going to add myself as well. You can also specify people's roles within the channel. There are two options. You can pick either owner or you can pick member. A member has full ability to to interact within the channel without any problems. An owner can not only do that, but they can manage the channel itself. They can add and remove members. They can make any sort of setting changes that they need to. Members can only really contribute material or posts and stuff. Most of the people in your channel are going to be members instead of owners, but you want to have at least 2 owners to anything that you do, just in case, someone wins the lottery and decides they never want to come back again, because that's continuity planning, really. Clicking add here, and it's going to add those members into my demo channel number 2. And here we have my channel. So what can you do with a channel? You can do pretty much anything that you would want to do. There is a sort of chat aspect to it where you can talk to anyone in the group. I clicked add a post here and I can add my post. If you want to add a subject and whatever, it'll look kind of like a Reddit post. Or if you're just wanting to put a message and start a little conversation chain, you can do that. You don't even have to add a subject. You have all of the text formattings that you could want. You can add emojis and you can add GIFs. You can also add other Microsoft things like loop components. You can attach files. You can do all sorts of things. I highly recommend that you just kind of click through this and see what sorts of fun stuff you can do. Click post here. And that'll be available to anyone that's in this channel, and they'll have received a activity pop-up if their settings are done correctly. So for example, I'm sure that Amy just got a notification letting her know that there had been a new post in Demo Channel 2. By default, you'll have this Posts tab, and you'll have this Shared tab. Depending on your update thing, like your cycle and whether your computer's pulled the newest version down, the shared version might be called documents. This was updated literally today. So if yours says documents, it's the same thing. What this is just all of the materials that have been shared within this channel. It'll show everything from loop components to Excel files, anything that's shared. However, there are more opportunities than just conversing or sending people different pieces of information or files. By clicking this plus button, you can add a new tab to your channel, and there are a ton of options. Pretty much anything that you are interested in within the Microsoft world is available to be added to your channel as an app here. You can see here, I can add this and it'll just pop in Excel, and you can actually work directly through that app and collaborate in that way. If you added a PDF, it would show directly on that screen and you would be able to read it. You can click see all and the list is just on and on and on and on and on. Some other types here that you have is are the new page option here at the top. This will add a page with a Microsoft loop. That is an interactive module where you can co-author something. You can do a little bit of project sort of management or like uh, brainstorming within it. It's really built well for those. Uh, the cool thing about those is that they can be shared in multiple locations, and no matter where you're looking at it, it is always live, like literally letter by letter as you type, other people will be able to see it, and it's always up to date. If you're interested in that one, we do have a deep dive later on. The other option here is existing page, and the cool thing about that is this isn't limited to Microsoft. If for some reason, I cannot speak and type at the same time very well. Whatever link it is that you're needing to put in here, like if there's the state office guidelines, or if you're collaborating somewhere else and you want to share it with your team internally, you can add those here. You can. Anyways, you can add that sort of information in as a tab. Another cool thing that we have as a team is you have the ability to just meet with your team. This is, if you used Google Meet, you can use it in Teams and you can meet in that same way. It's very familiar if you've Zoomed. It is very familiar if you've used Zoom before. The controls are a lot more similar to Zoom than they are to Google Meet. But the cool thing about that is like you can either schedule a meeting or like I could do Meet now and it'll just create a call with all of the people in this particular team. It's got everything you could want. It's got whiteboards, it's got chat, it's got you can do screen sharing, of course, and all of those goodies. There are that's a good question, Elijah.
I'm pretty sure you can.
I would encourage you to give someone a call and try it out. I did want to point out this little icon right here. This is just a general Microsoft tip for you, and you're going to see it in more than just Teams. But if you see this sort of like little arrow slidey thing, that means that there's a panel with more information that you can view if needed. I'm going to click this, and this is going to show me, in this particular case, some of the pertinent information to the channel that I currently have open. I can see the people that are currently members, the descriptions. If there were pinned posts, they show up here too, because I can do that. I can click the three little dots, and I can pin this. And there it appears. So just know that anywhere you see that particular icon, there's more stuff available to you that is probably currently hidden. Speaking of currently hidden things, not only do sometimes like your channels here get like hidden, but if you are rearranging your screen in certain ways, there is a thing that can happen. You have this little scroll slidey bar thing that lets you pick what size you want this to be. If it derps out, it might look like that. And so you might open your Teams one day and be like, oh my gosh, all of my Teams and controls are gone. The world is on fire. It's okay. If you look at these two little dashes right here, it'll let you open it back up. You can either drag it out or you can just click it and it'll pop open as a drawer. Just know that that's there and that's a thing. It's trying to be helpful. It does its best. I want to pause for just a second because I know that I am throwing stuff at you. Do you guys, are there any questions or is there anything that you guys were hoping to see that you haven't seen yet? while my friends are thinking about that one, I also just want to point you to some of these controls up here. You can customize a whole bunch of stuff, and you can look at specifically the things that matter to you. Amy, was there anything that you were wanting to cover that I haven't done yet?
Yeah. So just concept wise, what good is Teams? This is where all your stuff, once we migrate email, is going to live. You're going to want to be in Teams. You're going to want to be familiar with it because that's where your chat's going to be. And if you think of it, it's the doorway or the clothing to get to all your stuff. Your teams are your umbrella, and each channel is a subdivision of that team. With that said, and everything that Heather's shown you today, Microsoft loves to change stuff. And you may watch this same video 6 months from now, and things will have changed. Some of the documentation on Learn M365 and our articles, they may make a major change and it'll be different. And usually, I'm saying usually, the changes are for the better and make it easier. Like the whole chat in separate teams, that was a pain in the butt. But now they figured out a way to do the combined view so that you can see it all in one place. That was a change for the good. So you kind of have to have a little flexibility to be able to, pick up on those changes and know that they are constantly rolling out. And it's not just for Teams, it's for it all. But you're gonna want to know this and set it up that in a way that suits you best for your workflow, because you're going to be in it quite frequently, not just for Teams calls, for collaboration, because that's the name of the game. Microsoft is collaboration.
Like this top one right here is the insider for a reason. It's to where you can interact with all of our stuff in the same way that you would anywhere else. Right, I'm not seeing any other questions.
Mm-mm. Also, if you didn't put your name in the chat, please do. That's how we're taking the attendance for the PD because we haven't created it in NeoEd yet. So, but if you already did, you don't have to. I'll pull it from the chat. Thank you, please, and thank you.
All right. So the moral of this story is click around, find out what works for you. However, just know you're not on your own. There's stuff on Google, and we're always here to support you as well. If you have any questions as we move forward, always remember you can email us at helpdesk@blueridge.edu, and someone will be with you post haste.
And if you want to try out chatting,
Oh,
chat me or
yes.
Heather.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
love
yeah.
that.
Yeah. I keep telling people, I'm like, send me a joke, send me a meme, anything. I could do a little bit of joy in my life, Couldn't we all?
Yeah.
So thanks for coming today, guys.
I'm going to
And
stop recording.
awesome.